The ad appeared on page 17 of the Thursday paper. For sale, 1998, Honda Civic, blue, runs great, $2,400 or best offer. Call 555-0147. Nothing suspicious, nothing wrong, except Dorothy noticed the spacing, the numbers, the way certain letters were capitalized. And suddenly, she wasn't a retired crossword writer anymore. She was Cypher again, the code breaker who'd spent 30 years inside the NSA's most classified vault. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this story of hidden brilliance and silent vigilance, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe that legends never truly retire, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who protected us in silence. The morning sun filtered through the Riverside Gazette office windows. Dorothy Hamilton sat at her corner desk, platinum blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, blue eyes scanning the page proofs with practiced precision. At 75, she still turned heads. Her athletic figure defied her age. She wore a simple cream blouse and tailored slacks, reading glasses perched on her nose as she worked through the Thursday edition's crossword puzzle. She'd been the Gazette's puzzle editor for 15 years. Every Monday and Thursday, her crosswords appeared on page 23. The younger staff barely noticed her anymore. To them, she was just sweet old Dorothy, the grandmother who brought homemade cookies on Fridays. They had no idea who she really was. Dorothy's pen moved across the page, checking clues, verifying answers. Her mind, sharp as ever, processed patterns and connections with the same precision that had once made her the NSA's most valuable cryptanalyst. 15 down, 8 letters. Cold War Intelligence Org. NSA, of course. She smiled slightly. If only they knew. The classified section lay beside her proofs, waiting for final approval before the paper went to print. Dorothy always reviewed it, not because it was technically her job, but because old habits died hard. 3 decades of hunting for hidden messages and seemingly innocent communications didn't just disappear when you retired. She scanned the usual offering: garage sales, used furniture, job postings. Then her eyes stopped on page 17. For sale, 1998 Honda Civic, blue, runs great, $2,400 or best offer. Call 555-0147. Dorothy's pulse quickened. Something was wrong. Not obviously wrong. Not wrong in a way anyone else would notice, but wrong in a way that made her fingers tighten around her red pen. The spacing between certain words was inconsistent. The capitalization pattern didn't match standard advertising format. And those numbers. She grabbed a notepad and began writing. 2-4-0-5-5-5-0-1-4-7. Her hand moved automatically, applying frequency analysis techniques she hadn't used in 23 years. The numbers weren't random. They were coordinates, date markers. The phone number wasn't a phone number at all. She felt it then. The old familiar chill that used to run down her spine in the operations center at Fort Meade. The feeling that told her she'd just intercepted something that could cost lives. Dorothy stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. The young editor, Jake Morrison, looked up from his computer. "Jake," she said quietly, "who submitted this ad?" Jake barely glanced over. "Which one?" Dorothy pointed. "The Honda Civic." He clicked through files. "Came in online. Paid with prepaid credit card." "Why?" Dorothy's mind raced. "Anonymous payment. Online submission. Untraceable. Exactly how you'd communicate if you didn't want to be found." "I need the submission timestamp and IP address," she said. Jake laughed. "Dorothy, it's just a car ad. We don't track that stuff for classifieds." "I need it now," she repeated, her voice harder now, carrying an authority that made Jake's smile falter. He stared at her, confused by this sudden transformation. Sweet old Dorothy didn't sound sweet anymore. She sounded like someone used to being obeyed. "I'll see what I can find," he muttered, turning back to his computer. Dorothy returned to her desk, her hands slightly trembling as she pulled out her cell phone. It was an old flip phone, deliberately archaic. She opened it and stared at the screen for a long moment. She'd made a promise when she retired. No contact unless absolutely necessary. The NSA had let her walk away cleanly, no strings attached, in exchange for her silence. She'd kept that promise for 15 years. But if she was right about this ad, if her instincts hadn't dulled with age, then people were going to die. She dialed a number she'd memorized decades ago. It rang twice. Verification code. Dorothy hesitated. Cipher. Authentication Alpha 79er Black. Silence. Then, "We retired that designation in 2001. I know, but you need to listen." That afternoon, Dorothy sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away, laptop open, surrounded by notes. She'd broken down the ad into component parts, applying mathematical analysis that would have seemed like magic to most people. But to Dorothy, it was muscle memory. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed. A man entered, mid-40s, fit build, dark suit. He scanned the room before his eyes landed on Dorothy. He sat down without asking. "Mrs. Hamilton, I'm I'm Special Agent Marcus Chen, FBI Counterterrorism. We need to talk about your call. Dorothy closed her laptop. Did you run the analysis? Agent Chen nodded. We did, and if you're right, we have a problem. I am right, Dorothy said simply. Chen leaned forward. The ad was posted 6 days ago. We traced the IP to a VPN router in Virginia, but it bounced through servers in 4 countries. Whoever placed it knew what they were doing. Dorothy had already figured that part out. The code hidden in the ad was sophisticated, not government level, but close. It used a modified book cipher, referencing pages and line numbers from a specific text. She'd identified the base text within 20 minutes. Paradise Lost by John Milton, a common choice for this type of encoding because it was publicly available and unlikely to raise suspicion. What's the message? Chen asked. Dorothy slid a piece of paper across the table. She'd decoded it earlier. Tuesday, Federal Building, 0900, primary entrance. Chen's jaw tightened. That's 2 days from now. Federal Building in this context meant the Dirksen Federal Building in downtown Chicago. The 9 a.m. timing suggested a coordinated attack during morning rush hour when foot traffic was highest. How many people are in that building at 9 a.m.? Dorothy asked. Approximately 3,000, Chen replied, plus another 1,000 in the surrounding plaza. Dorothy felt the weight of that number. 4,000 potential casualties if they didn't stop this. Chen pulled out his phone. We're mobilizing a task force now. But I need to know something, Mrs. Hamilton. How did you catch this? Our algorithm scanned thousands of ads daily, looking for exactly this kind of hidden communication. Nothing flagged. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Your algorithms look for known patterns. This wasn't a known pattern. It was a hybrid system, combining Cold War Soviet methodology with modern cryptographic elements. I recognized it because I helped design the countermeasures for the Soviet version back in 1979. Chen stared at her. You worked for NSA. It wasn't a question, but Dorothy nodded anyway. What was your clearance level? High enough, Dorothy said, which was the only answer she could give. Chen absorbed this information. We're going to need your help. Full cooperation with the task force. Dorothy had known this was coming. Once you stepped back into this world, even for a moment, it pulled you back completely. I'll help, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. No publicity, no recognition. When this is over, I go back to my crossword puzzles and everyone forgets I was involved. Chen nodded. Agreed. What else? Dorothy hesitated, then said, I want operational access, not just advisory. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it properly. Chen considered this. Ma'am, with all due respect, you've been retired for 15 years. Field operations protocols have changed. Dorothy met his gaze steadily. Agent Chen, I broke codes that prevented nuclear war. I've tracked terrorist cells across 3 continents using nothing but intercepted phone calls and mathematical probability. I can handle your protocols. Something in her tone, in the absolute confidence of her words, made Chen reconsider. He made a quick decision. I'll clear it with my director, he said. But you'll need to pass security review. I still have clearance, Dorothy said. It's dormant, but it doesn't expire. Check your database under designation Cipher, Alpha 79 Black. Chen pulled out his phone and made a call. He walked away from the table, speaking in low tones. Dorothy watched him through the coffee shop window, saw the moment his expression changed from skepticism to shock. He was looking at her file, seeing her operational record, understanding exactly who he was dealing with. When he returned, his entire demeanor had changed. Mrs. Hamilton, he said carefully, I apologize. I didn't realize. Your record is extraordinary. Dorothy waved this away. That was a long time ago. My director wants to meet you. Tomorrow morning, 0700 FBI field office downtown. Dorothy nodded. I'll be there. As Chen left, Dorothy returned to her laptop. She had work to do. The decoded message was just the beginning. There had to be more communication, more pieces of the puzzle. Terrorist operations of this scale required coordination, planning, multiple contact points. She began searching through archived editions of the Gazette, going back 6 months. If someone was using the classified section as a communication channel, they'd likely done it before. 2 hours later, she found another ad from 8 weeks ago. For rent, 2-bedroom apartment, downtown. Utilities included, $1,200 per month. Call 5550292. Same pattern, same encoding, different message. She decoded it quickly. Confirmation, assets in place, awaiting final authorization. She kept searching, found 3 more ads spanning 4 months. By midnight, she had decoded 5 messages outlining a sophisticated terrorist operation. Not just the federal building, multiple targets, simultaneous attacks. Dorothy's hands shook as she compiled her findings. She was 75, sitting in a dark coffee shop, holding information that could prevent the worst domestic attack since Oklahoma City. She sent the encrypted file to Agent Chen's secure email. Then she closed her laptop and drove home. Her small house on Maple Street looked the same as always. Dorothy unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. She'd lived alone since her husband passed away 9 years ago. window. She walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, and reached behind the winter coats. Her fingers found the lockbox. Inside was her past. NSA credentials, commendations from operations that officially never happened, photographs of colleagues, and at the bottom, a small velvet box containing the National Security Medal presented by the president in a private ceremony in 1989. She'd never told anyone about it. Dorothy closed the box and returned it to the lockbox. She wasn't that person anymore, but tomorrow she'd have to be Cypher again. The FBI field office was stark. Concrete walls, security checkpoints, stern-faced agents. Dorothy passed through security with credentials Agent Chen had arranged, then was escorted to a conference room. Inside, a dozen people waited. FBI counterterrorism specialists, NSA liaisons, DHS coordinators, Chicago PD bomb squad commander. They looked at Dorothy with barely concealed skepticism. An elderly woman in a cardigan wasn't what they'd expected. Chen pulled up Dorothy's decoded messages on the large screen. This is what Mrs. Hamilton extracted from the classified ads. As you can see, we're looking at a coordinated 5-point attack. Federal Building, Union Station, Navy Pier, O'Hare International, and Michigan Avenue Bridge during rush hour. The room erupted with controlled chaos. Questions fired rapidly. How reliable was the intelligence? What was the confidence level? Had the sources been verified? Dorothy waited until the room quieted. Then she spoke. The encoding methodology matches known terrorist communication protocols used by cells operating in Western Europe between 2015 and 2019. The mathematical structure suggests the encoder has advanced training, possibly military or intelligence background. The book cipher uses Paradise Lost, which has been favored by jihadist groups since 2008 because it's considered religiously ambiguous enough to avoid suspicion. Everyone stared at her. She continued, "The 5 target locations are strategically chosen to maximize casualties while dividing emergency response. Federal Building hits government infrastructure. Union Station targets commuters. Navy Pier creates mass civilian panic. O'Hare disrupts national transportation. Michigan Avenue Bridge, if destroyed during rush hour, traps thousands in the downtown corridor." The police commander, a grizzled veteran named Rodriguez, leaned forward. "You got all this from a used car ad?" Dorothy met his gaze calmly. "I got this from 5 ads, cross-referenced with historical terrorist operational planning, analyzed through probability matrices and geographical target assessment. This is what they're planning. The question is whether you believe me enough to act on it." Chen spoke up. "Mrs. Hamilton's background is NSA, Cryptanalysis Division, 30 years operational experience. Her clearance level is higher than anyone in this room except me. If she says this is real, it's real." The DHS coordinator, a woman named Sandra Pierce, spoke up. "Even if we accept this analysis, we can't evacuate 5 major locations based on coded classified ads. We need more concrete intelligence." Dorothy had expected this. She pulled out a folder from her bag. "While you were all sleeping last night, I did additional analysis. The phone numbers in the ads aren't random. They're coordinates encoded in a substitution cipher. When plotted on a map, they form a pattern." She spread out a map of Chicago on the conference table. Red marks indicated the decoded locations. "These are staging points, where the operatives are likely storing equipment or meeting for final coordination. You want concrete intelligence? Send teams to these locations. You'll find what you're looking for." Rodriguez studied the map. "These are all in different neighborhoods. Warehouse district, residential area, commercial zone. How do we hit all of them simultaneously without tipping off the cell?" Dorothy smiled slightly. "You don't. You surveil first. Confirm my analysis, then you move." Chen nodded. "We'll set up observation teams within the hour." The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. Operational details hammered out with military precision. Dorothy provided technical analysis on the communication methods, suggested counter-surveillance protocols, recommended interrogation approaches if suspects were captured. She'd slipped back into this role so easily it frightened her. The language, the mindset, the cold analytical assessment of threat levels and acceptable risks. It was all still there, buried under 15 years of crossword puzzles and quiet retirement. As the meeting broke up, Sandra Pierce approached Dorothy. "Mrs. Hamilton, I owe you an apology. When Agent Chen said we were consulting a 75-year-old newspaper editor, I thought it was pointless." Dorothy smiled. "No apology necessary. Being underestimated at my age is actually quite useful. May I ask why you retired?" Dorothy was quiet, then said, "Because every code I broke was connected to death. Sometimes I prevented it. Sometimes I didn't. After 30 years, I needed words that created joy. Crossword puzzles make people smile." The surveillance operation moved fast. By 2 p.m., teams were positioned at all 5 locations Dorothy had identified. By 4 p.m., they had visual confirmation at 3 sites. Dorothy watched the live feeds from the command center. On screen 1, a warehouse showed 2 men unloading large crates. On screen 3, a residential garage revealed someone assembling triggering devices. We've got enough for search warrants, Chen said. Dorothy shook her head. Not yet. You need to identify all cell members before you move. If you raid now, whoever's not at these locations will disappear. Chen frowned. The attack is scheduled for tomorrow morning. We're running out of time. Trust me, Dorothy said firmly. There's a primary coordinator you haven't identified yet. The person who placed the ads, who's running this operation. They're not at any of these locations. How do you know? Because if I were running this operation, I wouldn't be anywhere near the staging sites. I'd be somewhere public, anonymous, with multiple escape routes. She paused. Check your surveillance footage for someone who visited multiple target locations in the past week. Someone conducting final reconnaissance. Chen made a call. Within minutes, his technical team was running facial recognition on surveillance cameras at all 5 target sites, cross-referencing visitors over the past 10 days. 20 minutes later, they had a hit. Same person at the Federal Building Monday, Union Station Tuesday, Navy Pier Wednesday. He's scouting routes. Dorothy studied the man's face. Professional demeanor, casual clothing, nothing remarkable. Exactly how you'd want to look. Run him through databases. Khalid Rahman, former Iraqi military, immigrated 2011, working as an engineer. No criminal record. What kind of engineer? Structural engineering. Specialization in demolition. There it is, Dorothy said quietly. He knows exactly how to bring down those buildings with minimum explosive material. That's why your bomb-sniffing algorithms didn't flag anything. He's not using traditional bomb. What's he using? Dorothy pulled up architectural diagrams of the Federal Building on her laptop. She studied the structural plan, her mind working through calculation. The Federal Building was built in 1964, she said. That means steel frame construction with specific load-bearing column. If you know which columns to target, you can trigger a progressive collapse with relatively small charges placed at critical junction. He's thinking of what happened to Building 7 during September 11th. The room went silent. Everyone understood the implication. How much time do we have? Rodriguez asked. Dorothy checked her watch. If the attack is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow, he'll need to place the charges tonight, most likely between midnight and 4 a.m. when security is lightest and foot traffic is non-existent. We set up countermeasures now, Chen decided. Full security sweeps of all 5 locations, K9 units, structural engineers, the works. And we put a team on Rahman 24/7. And when he moves? Pierce asked. We take him down, Chen said flatly. The next 18 hours moved like lightning. Dorothy remained at the command center, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. At 11:47 p.m., Rahman left his apartment. Surveillance followed as he drove downtown. He parked 3 blocks from the Federal Building and waited. At 1:23 a.m., 2 other men arrived. Brief conversation, exchange of backpacks. Then they split up, each heading toward different targets. Multiple teams, Chen confirmed. 5 suspects, each heading to one attack site. Wait, Dorothy said. Let them think they're succeeding. Chen stared. You want us to let them plant explosives? Fake explosive. Replace the contents during the exchange. Let them think they're arming real devices. That's risky, Pierce objected. Dorothy faced the room. If we arrest them now, we get conspiracy charges. If we let them believe they're succeeding, then arrest them at activation. We get attempted mass murder. That sends a message. Chen considered this. His tactical teams could pull off the switch if they were fast enough. And Dorothy was right about the legal advantages. Do it, he ordered. The operation unfolded with precision. As Rahman's associates transferred backpacks, FBI agents moved in during a staged car accident. In 15 seconds, the backpacks were swapped. The suspects never knew. Over the next 3 hours, 5 men placed inert devices at what they believed were critical points. Each one followed professional protocols. Each one believed they were about to change history. At 4:47 a.m., Rahman sent a text. 1 word. Ready. All units prepare, Chen commanded. At 5:15 a.m., as dawn touched the Chicago skyline, FBI tactical teams moved simultaneously on all 5 locations. The arrests were flawless. Rahman and his 4 associates were taken into custody without resistance. They believed their devices were active right until they saw the FBI badges. Dorothy watched from the command center as Rahman was brought in. Even through the one-way glass, she could see the moment he realized he'd been compromised. The disbelief, the rage. Agent Chen entered the observation room. It's over. All 5 in custody. Devices recovered. No casualties. Because of you. Dorothy shook her head. Because of a used car ad and old habits. Chen smiled. The director wants to thank you personally. Commendation ceremony. Number. We had an agreement. No publicity. This stays classified. Mrs. Hamilton, you prevented one of the largest terrorist attacks. You deserve recognition. Dorothy turned to face him. Blue eyes, sharp despite exhaustion. Agent Chen, I've spent 50 years being someone else. 15 of those years, I was free. I'd like to keep it that way. Chen nodded. He understood. Good. What will you do now? Dorothy smiled. Go back to my crossword puzzles. 3 days later, Dorothy sat at her corner desk in the Riverside Gazette office. The morning sun filtered through the same dusty windows. Jake Morrison was at his computer, arguing with someone on the phone about ad rates. Everything was exactly as it had been, except Dorothy knew the truth. 4,000 people were alive today because she'd noticed a pattern, because she'd remembered skills she was supposed to have forgotten. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you, Cypher. Your service continues to matter. Dorothy deleted the message and returned to her crossword puzzle. 17 across, 14 letters. One who solves complex problems in secret. She wrote the answer, Codebreaker. That afternoon, as Dorothy was leaving the office, Jake called out to her. Hey Dorothy, weird question. Did you used to work in tech or something? I saw you analyzing that classified ad last week, and it seemed like you knew what you were looking for. Dorothy smiled warmly. The picture of a sweet grandmother. Oh no, dear. I've always worked with words. Crosswords are about patterns, you know. Once you learn to see them, they're everywhere. Jake nodded, losing interest, and returned to his computer. Dorothy walked out into the afternoon sunshine, her platinum blonde hair catching the light. To anyone watching, she was just another elderly woman heading home after a day's work. No one knew that she'd just saved a city. No one knew about the 30 years she'd spent in the shadows, protecting a nation that never knew her name. And that was exactly how she wanted it, because true legends don't need recognition. They just need to know they made a difference. And Dorothy Hamilton, Cypher, the woman who never stopped being a guardian even when she thought she'd retired, had made all the difference in the world. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary until one moment revealed their extraordinary past? Someone whose quiet competence masked years of silent service? Share their story in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the greatest heroes are often the ones we never see coming.